We were really excited to connect with Brandon, who's done a really phenomenal job as the head of technology, instrumental in the strategic direction of Aero Exterminators, not only on the technology side, but really looking at the whole customer experience and the development of all the applications to support the long-term goals of Aero. So I'm really excited to hear from Brandon and get some tips and tricks. But before I do that, wanted to share our perspective at NWN as a leading tech-enabled services company, where we're seeing, a broad base of our customers go and how we're supporting them. I think first and foremost, as we all know, this big shift to the cloud related to collaboration, contact center, not dissimilar to what happened really last decade, which was where we had our applications moving to the cloud as more and more core capabilities and infrastructure was really coming along to support tier one applications. We're seeing the same movement now as we get into the core business infrastructure related to voice, as we go into video, as we go into contact centers, as we go into security, as we go into the networking aspects. And so as a company, we had always seen the next 36 months as being really instrumental. But the thing happened on the way to the cloud, which is COVID-19. And there are customers like Brandon, as a distributed enterprise, they had to really get ahead of this. And they made strategic decisions that set them up for, today, tomorrow, and whatever is to come, whether it be COVID or any other sort of new type of work style that comes into the market. But we really see this as an inflection point where it's not a nice to have a capabilities that enable people to remotely work, but really becomes essential. And for once, we're seeing from our customers, full agreement between management and employees. This actually comes from two different studies. On the left-hand side, this is from a PricewaterhouseCoopers COVID-19 study that came out at the end of April, which is really talking about what management's looking at both, kind of during and after COVID-19. The consideration is to make a distributed work style somewhat permanent and to think about new investments around automation to help facilitate their employees and their customers to continue to have a really great experience, somewhat independent of location. The second part is that employees also agree that for the first time, they want to at least have the option to work remotely. That requires a whole new set of thinking around security, people, processes, tools, technologies, and technology partners who are tech-enabled to help support, this sort of coming together between what the executive staff is looking for, what customers are looking for, and what employees are expecting to have at their disposal to continue to drive business as usual. At NWN, we have 420 people across 9 offices. We support 1,300 of the largest organizations around the country. And we've really built our entire portfolio stack of services around supporting customers in this distributed work environment, around their movement to the cloud, supporting them from at the first level, which is how are we going to measure and monitor the experience to make sure that we deliver against an SLA. And hopefully Brandon can talk a little bit about how they're enabling self-service and self-care at the macro view and understanding heuristics and analytics about the security, the network, the whole stack. And then underneath that experience management platform that we've built are our core 5 offerings, which are the device that you use to connect to your business, whether it be a laptop, a desktop, an endpoint, and we do that in a service-oriented manner with the security wrapped in. Whether that be unified communications, whether it be an on-premise phone or desktop application, soft client, or whether it be something we deliver as a cloud service. Whether that be a fully integrated contact center with omnichannel and natural language processing capabilities, whether that's security and analytics around how you're adapting your security posture both on-premise or in the cloud, and then all the underlying infrastructure, the networking, the connectivity, all of that makes the whole business communications infrastructure work, whether you're centrally located or whether you're distributed, as is the case with Brandon and his team. We've built a few core technologies that's really given our customers the ability to do this at scale as they make this movement to the cloud. As you see here, Gartner has also seen this movement to the cloud where a lot of adoption's soaring, but the tools to manage and monitor it don't exist. And that's what we've done at NWN. We built a whole platform that allows customers to do this successfully, giving you full visibility and full control over those capabilities in a unique way. During the COVID scenario, we also built a remote worker bundle that many of our customers have been able to enjoy to dramatically accelerate the time to success, whether it be a contact center, whether it be distributed devices, whether it be unified communications. We're able to, in sort of a one-stop shop, get our organizations up and running. This wasn't the case with Brandon and his team. They actually were well ahead of this curve, and we'll hear about that in a minute. I think within a broader context, if we look again at some polling data, this is from a pandemic response partner survey. If you look at the second half of this year, this is where we're seeing our customers really focus their time and attention. And I think, again, you'll see with the insight that Brandon and the foresight that Brandon has provided to Arrow, they've certainly made a lot of these investments ahead of time, which has made them really successful both, sort of before, during, and after this remote work renaissance, unfortunately due to the circumstances, but I think it's really set them up for a long run. So you're looking at security as paramount, you're looking at cloud management, that's where that experience management layer comes in, unified communications and contact centers, core networking, and then the devices that allow you to go ahead and make that all work with hands-on keyboards for your customers. Without further ado, Brandon, the floor is yours to educate us on your secrets and your best practices that you've developed setting up Arrow for great success.
Well, thank you, Andrew. Thanks to NWN for everything you guys have done for us. We'll just dive right in. So, Arrow Exterminators today. So we're the 6th largest pest control company in the United States. We're the 2nd largest privately held pest control company. We have a little over 2,100 vehicles on the road, 128 service centers in 12 different states, about 2,500 team members, revenues exceeding $250 million, and most recently we were named Atlanta Journal-Constitution's #1 top workplace in Atlanta. As you can imagine, being founded in 1964, Arrow used a lot of paper back in the day. As we kind of migrated to the use of computers, they started off with some standalone databases in each of the service centers. I can remember stories of them struggling to get metrics from the different service centers and to have kind of a holistic viewpoint of how the business was running and how to make business decisions. Later they moved into a distributed database and then finally moved into more of a SaaS model, which allowed us to use of our what we call executive dashboard, which is really it's a business analytics tool that allows us to see metrics across the board throughout our organization and to make real-time live decisions based on factual data. So we'll talk a little bit about infrastructure. So I joined Arrow back in March 1st, 2016 as the Vice President of Technology. Up until this point, IT was, like most companies, more of a cost center. But the leadership at Arrow, they knew they had to continue on the growth path that they'd established, and in order to do so, technology needed to be a way of enabling and growing the business as part of its strategic direction. So that's when I was brought on board, and that's when we started looking at what I would call the technology infrastructure, that layer that you have to lay to be able to add things on top of. So, when I got here, we had a pop mail server in the snack closet. We had T1 lines in the service centers, and I say unmanaged wireless. What I mean by that is literally we would have a new service center that we would open or we would acquire, and one of our IT guys would drive out to the service center to get everything set up, and he'd run into Radio Shack and grab whatever wireless access point he could grab, and he'd set it up, and whatever SSID he thought of at the time, that's what he put on it, and shared passwords and that kind of thing. So it's kind of interesting to look back on where we were at. 2016, after I came on board, one of the first things we did was we started migrating over, of course, to Office 365 with OneDrive and SharePoint. And the vision there was really, what can we do to get rid of all these servers? As an IT department or a technology department, I didn't see my team being called at 2 a.m. because a server's down is not necessarily adding value to the business moving forward. Yeah, it keeps the server up, but it's much easier to outsource that type stuff and let somebody else deal with it. And that way we can focus on things that provide value to the business and help us generate revenue moving forward. So Office 365 with OneDrive and SharePoint, that helps us, of course, get rid of the pot mill server, and it helps with collaboration. Then we moved over and started putting fiber Ethernet and managed Wi-Fi in all of our locations, implemented an MDM. We put all new printers in all the offices. We moved over to Azure AD. We replaced those old fax line with electronic fax. And then moving into 2019, we moved our last remaining in-house server was our accounting server, and we moved that over to Great Plains cloud version. PestPack, which is some might call it a CRM. It's not really a CRM, but it's kind of our operating system. It's how we handle billing and scheduling and routing, and just pretty much it's how we run our business. So we did a migration there into a cross-browser upgrade, which, we were on the old, you got to use IE methodology back then. And once we moved over, that opened up, to different devices you could use to access the application, mobile, Chromebooks or whatever, iPads. And then, of course, with NWN's help, we replaced our in-house PBX with a Cisco cloud-based phone system, new Cisco phone switches and access points. And then in 2020, we've already began implementing our software-defined wide area network, or SD-WAN, and we've implemented some, Cisco security measures with Umbrella, AMP for endpoints, the Cisco email security, and then Agari, which is now it's being white labeled by Cisco. So talk a little bit about Arrow and NWN's partnership. So we had a strained relationship with some partners, and we were struggling to find solutions moving forward. So, we had went to the table with Cisco and asked for some guidance. And one of the things Cisco did was they brought NWN to the table. They said, we feel like that, based on the problems that you've had in the past, the things you're looking for, this would be a good fit. So we started having conversations, ended up, signing an agreement, entering into a partnership around June 2019. Moving forward, July 2019, we began migration over to the NWN hosted Cisco Call Manager, upgraded the equipment, phones, and new call center software. And obviously, around March 13th, 14th of this year, that's when the national and statewide state of emergencies were declared. We had a good relationship, so we felt comfortable going back to NWN and saying, hey, we need some help. Arrow's been primarily a in-the-office type company where people report into the office with our different service centers, our corporate staff. And now we're in a situation where we need to start kind of spreading things out. Conversations went on for a couple weeks there. We came up with a plan. April 1st, we signed the quote to implement Expressway, a Cisco IM and presence with Jabber, a VPN solution, and then about 10 days later, it was all delivered, which was significantly faster than what we thought. It was about 80%. It was significantly faster. It gave us the ability to put 80% of our employees pretty much remote, or have the ability for them to be remote. And we couldn't have done this without that process, without all the things that the foundation that we laid in the background up to this point, and then also the things that we did with NWN to implement these processes and these technologies made that all a lot easier in a short period of time. I think just about everybody's been thrust into finding a solution for remote work. For some companies, it's been harder than others. And you've seen the news recently. There's companies like Facebook, Twitter, Square, others. They're considering making remote work a permanent solution. You know, Twitter's out there even encouraging people to do the same thing for everybody. Obviously, Facebook, Google, and Twitter. Not everybody's structured like those companies are. And as technology professionals, we're notified of what these big companies are doing, and then sometimes we feel like we have to mimic what they're doing because they're always in the news. But if there's anything I could tell you or any advice that I could offer, it's you don't have to try to mimic these companies just because they're in the news and that's what we read. It's important to find a solution that fits your organization. And it's also important to partner with somebody that you can trust to help you with that. For Arrow, it's important that we have remote work capabilities, especially in times like we've had recently. However, we didn't get where we were today by accident. A lot of our success comes from how we treat our customers. Since 1964, we've always answered phone calls with a live voice. There's no call queues. There's no press the button to talk to this sales department. It's always a live voice 100% of the time, even after hours. So for us, that's a competitive advantage that we have no interest in doing away with. So the solutions and processes we choose and we implement, they have to keep that in the forefront. So that's why it was important for us to find a solution that fit our organization and also to find a partner that we could trust.
That's it. So I got a couple questions, but what were some of the considerations or reservations that you had before moving to your remote work posture?
Honestly, probably the biggest reservation we had was just not being accustomed to managing people in a remote setting. The distractions that come along with remote work, we all know about it. We've all been experiencing them recently, but those are things that you have to look at. Whether it be pets in the background, children running around, the Amazon deliveries. I get 10 of those a day, especially now that my wife's home all day. But we publish some best practices, and we use various tools to help manage that productivity, such as the call logs that we get through NWN, as well as our quasi operating system. Kind of help balance some of that. But yeah, that was probably the biggest reservation.
You said there were some good things that came out of it. What were some of the positives that came out of moving to a remote work setting?
Metro Atlanta is very big. It's a big city, and it seems like it's only getting bigger. Some people say it reaches from Alabama to South Carolina. And sometimes I agree with that, especially when I'm stuck in traffic, during rush hour in Atlanta. But, we have employees that they may drive 60 plus miles away to get to the corporate office. So, just giving them the ability to have some flexibility around their work schedule is probably hands down the best part.
We had a question from the audience. Talk to me about security. How did you set it up initially that helped you be successful, or how did you adapt security to this distributed posture?
That's a great question. So, we mentioned a little bit about Cisco. We were fortunate enough that we were ahead of that curve. So, with some of the tools that we purchased and implemented through Cisco, it allowed us to push those security measures out to the remote workstations. We're able to kind of secure them in such a way that if they're outside of our network, they're still managed just like they're in our network. So that was huge. Cisco's AMP product was great, and along with the other products that we implemented.
Another question from the audience. From your perspective, what does the new normal look like for Arrow? How do you think things will change, in the future for your employees?
Yeah,
having gone through this.
Remote work was something that we always kind of we looked at and we thought was appealing, but nothing really pushed us to make it happen. And this pandemic kind of pushed us into taking action. And now we see it and we say, what? People can still be productive when they're working remotely. People could still do their jobs. So new normal, I think, is companies just have to find the right balance there. Obviously, some situations that works great. Some situations it won't. So I think things will change. I think people see it now more so than they have in the past, but it's finding the right balance for your company.
Absolutely. So in hindsight, right, 2020, when you went through this digital transformation, is there anything you would have done differently?
I think, if anything, I probably would have gotten started sooner. I wouldn't have waited till the pandemic to, when you say digital transformation, we've been going through a digital transformation. But I guess that last push over the edge, was when the pandemic came and the national emergencies were declared. If there's anything I could change it, we would have done that a little bit sooner, and we would have had a little bit more time to go through stuff. Obviously, anytime you're dealing with a large project for a company like us, it's the more time you have to do it and test is better. It all ended up working out, but I probably would have a lot less gray hair if I'd have done it sooner.
Another question from the audience here. What were the top 3 recommendations that you have for somebody who maybe is at the beginning of this shift? Maybe they haven't been able to, do what you did due to the nature of their business. Maybe it wasn't as distributed. You're in 12 states. You have 2,100 employees. You're already somewhat distributed. What are some other considerations that you have for organizations that may have not gone as fast as you did, besides working with NWN?
Yeah. Well, I think, it kind of goes back to your infrastructure. I think it all starts with, you got to start there. You got to build a foundation in which you can improve on. So for me, foundation is, internet access, networking, that networking side of it, the unified communications piece of it, how you manage your data center if you have a data center, and is having a data center the right thing for you, or is that something you should look at, outsourcing to somewhere else? So for me, it's obviously not knowing much about the organization is hard to pinpoint a particular thing, but those would be kind of the areas that I would focus on is what can I do to kind of get the ball rolling and start laying a foundation to make changes moving forward, because it's not going to happen overnight.
That's great. So what are looking towards the future? What's sort of on your strategic roadmap that you're looking at as far as new services, new offerings, new capabilities, to make sure that you guys continue to grow at that 10% clip and be able to easily integrate other organizations?
Yeah, so for us, obviously, I think you're talking about from a technology standpoint, right? Not from a...
Absolutely.
Yeah,
technology.
Obviously for us, like I said, that foundation's there now. So now it's where, okay, now we got to start looking at what do we do from a technology standpoint to assist our customers? How do we make it easier for our customers to do business with Arrow? How do we make it easier for them to schedule appointments, to make payments, to, track technicians that are on the way to their house? How do we make it? How do we kind of update some of our processes when it comes to interacting with our customer base, and just making it easier for them to do business with Arrow? And I think that's the direction and the focus you'll see, in addition to the things we've already been doing moving forward.
Really, again, appreciate your partnership here. Thanks again for everyone who was able to tune in today to hear some of the secrets of remote work success.